Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Superman and Lois. So, with the end of the show of Superman and Lois, of course, comes reflection on what has come, not just throughout this final season and its 10 episodes, but just the series as a whole, all 4 seasons. And the other day we went over an interview with the showrunners for Superman and Lois, that being Todd Helbing and Brent Fletcher, that they did with Deadline, which was interesting, but I scoped out some other interviews. There was a fair few. I think there's also some like podcast or mini podcast sort of things. And just sort of got the best of the rest, if you want to put it, with questions and answers, not within that Deadline interview. So definitely thought it would be interesting, or an interesting thing to go over, just because sometimes certain interviews don't ask certain questions. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on everything we go over, just whether it's any, reflection, if you want to put it on what's addressed, as well as any maybe like further thoughts in regards to what they talk about and discuss, because people have different opinions and stuff, so I'm always curious to hear what you guys are saying. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, want to show your support, drop a like, takes 2 seconds. So the first 2 questions come from a Screen Rant interview, and this is with Todd Helbing and, this is with Alex Garfin. These first 2 questions and answers are from Alex Garfin, who plays Jordan. So the first one asks, I don't know what it said in the script, but during the flash forward, we see Jordan with a brunette, and I'm just going to assume that that is grown-up Sarah. Am I correct? Is this something I get to reveal? I'm pretty sure in the script it was some other name. It was just some random name. I can look it up right now if you want, but it was just some random name though. It wasn't Sarah. In my mind, Jordan and Sarah were never meant to be together. I think that relationship was them exploring everything that you shouldn't do in a relationship, and I'm really happy that they became friends in the way that they did, much like Indy, who plays Sarah, and I did in real life. And I think it's actually an interesting thing, because I saw someone say on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now, that Jordan's relationship with Sarah maybe mirrors Clark's relationship with Lana, which I thought was, and obviously Sarah is Lana's daughter, Jordan is Clark's son. And I think that's actually fairly interesting, especially if that's what the showrunners, or specifically Todd Helbing, envisioned. Like, okay, they were, very close in a relationship and sort of like on and off and stuff throughout their teen years. And then once it came into like entering adulthood and going into their further life, they just weren't a compatible match at that point. Doesn't mean they don't care about each other, but just not in that moment they're a compatible match. And I thought that's fairly interesting. Now, nothing's addressed in regards to whether Jonathan marries a grown-up Candace. That's not mentioned. It's just with Jordan and Sarah specifically, they weren't the couple that we saw in the future. But it was an easy one to assume, because the woman or the actress playing the older version, or just Jordan's wife when he's older, looks like it could easily be an older version of Sarah. So it was an easy thing to assume. But I think that matches up, especially when you do like the parallel between Clark and Lana. But the second question that was asked to Alex has to do with the suits that they wore in the final, not the final shot, but in that final 10-minute thing. And he was asked, so could you explain what this, and he was shown the concept art that we saw about a month ago. He asked what they were for, and also, was it for a previous season? He goes, yeah, that was a proof of concept. I'm pretty sure of what these suits would look like for the last couple of frames. I mean, I don't think it was ever really a debate to build the ones for real. There was for another version of the show that we'll get into another interview with you when I can speak a little more freely. But by the time it came to Michael and I are both doing it towards the end of season 4, they were pretty sure they were just going to digitally add it all on us. It's a lot cheaper that way. So it's very interesting. So he says essentially, like, I guess that concept art was to then create like a digital model to put on specifically the characters of Jordan and Jonathan and that final thing. But he also teases that there was other suits for like if that would get made for real if they got season 5, season 6, etc. So that's interesting. And he says, like, that could be touched upon later. Now, whether he's specifically saying there were other suit designs, or whether there were just other plans to do other sort of suits, that's another question. But at least we know that specifically based off what Alex Garfin's saying there is that that concept art was done literally just, I guess, for that final, one of the final shots we see of Jonathan and Jordan in their teen years. The next question, just one singular question, comes from an interview with The Wrap, and they asked, with the end of Superman and Lois, we officially close this era of superhero shows on the CW that started with Arrow back in 2012. Were there any talks about bringing back any stars from these shows for the final season, with Todd Helbing saying, we definitely had conversations. The tricky part is that we already had a bunch of hurdles to jump over the season, and now everybody's doing something different. Grant Gustin was on Broadway, and Melissa Benoist was in a different show, so you think about the logistics of doing that and how difficult it is. it sort of makes it preventative in a lot of ways. So we all felt like the best way to honor everything that happened before is just really do something unique and try to stick to landing and have an ending that people really feel and it lasts with them for a while. And I think we all sort of got the gist that that was probably going to happen once we like they'd wrap shooting them and they were in the process of filming the finale, just because people know when they're in Vancouver, like people know, oh, this actor's here, this actor's there. Like it just sort of gets out there. Like it's pretty rare someone goes under the radar and doesn't get noticed. So it just felt like there wasn't going to be at least anyone like a Grant Gustin, like a Melissa Benoist or anything like that for the most part. But I did see an interesting thing that people sort of put together, and I don't know if this was the intention. I guess that's for Todd Helbing or Brent Fletcher or even, maybe even some of the cast to discuss. But the finale of Superman Lois, especially that last 10 minutes roughly, feels like a lot of, which even maybe even arguably the entire final season, feels like almost like an amalgamation of some of the stuff that the other shows did. So if you look at like Arrow, for example, with the afterlife thing where he goes in there with Felicity and stuff, very much like what we saw at the end of Superman and Lois. The identity reveal, very much what happens in the finale for Supergirl. Obviously that happens earlier in Superman and Lois's final season, but it's still in that finale like storyline, if you want to put it, for the show. And even with like him building his legacy and the crew around him with the two Superboys, Steel, Starlight, aka Natalie, that's almost very much like how the Flash ends when he sends out the lightning bolt. So it's almost like an amalgamation. I don't know if that was intentional. It would be very interesting and cool if it was, but it might just be a coincidence. I don't know, but it sort of felt that way. The next question comes from Entertainment Weekly, and they asked, in the moments in the final montage showing Clark working alongside adult Jonathan and Jordan, as well as John Henry and Natalie, as a 5-person super team would make a great spin-off. Is that something you're interested in exploring in a new show, with Todd Helbing saying, yeah, that would be fun. I mean, if James Gunn called us up, and I would say yes. However, we're really satisfied and proud of what we did the last 4 seasons, with Brent Fletcher adding, it was meant to just show the arc of their lives. Love the characters and would certainly be open to it, but it was never the intent to debut a spin-off. We're just trying to give a window into where each of these characters lands and how their lives unfold. And obviously that's the intention. The intention wasn't like to plant a seed of like, hey, peer pressure, a spin-off or anything like that. So yeah, and I think like a lot of shows do that, not just Superman Lois. I mean, The Flash did it, right at the end, and you see it with a lot of different things as well. I think I saw... And I was actually going to leave to the end of the video just to bring it up slightly, but I'll put it here because it sort of stems from this question. It is going to be interesting to see if James Gunn uses any people, whether it is specifically from Superman and Lois or anyone that's done the DC TV shows in the past, whether it's Arrowverse or the adjacent shows on other networks, or even the ones that are on the CW as well. Because like Daredevil Born Again, is that the show? The Disney Plus like Daredevil revival show? Like half of the episodes are written by like Arrowverse alums. They're not just like someone that came and wrote one episode. People that were there for like years and wrote episodes on, I think, Arrow and Flash specifically. And they stemmed into like other shows, like wrote for Legend of Tomorrow, but they were mainstays on either Arrow or Flash. So it is interesting to see if maybe James Gunn taps into that. Like it wouldn't surprise me too much if he cast Bitsy Tulloch or something like that. But like in regards to the creatives, I'm very intrigued to see if he'd touch upon that, because, I mean, Todd Helbing, I think, had really good ideas on The Flash. I just don't think he lost a lot of, like, personal interest in the show, but you can see how solid he can be, especially with Superman and Lois, and he did such a good job, and I know who could have done a better job, because, damn, he was consistent. And the final question comes from an interview with CBR. It's a fairly long one, but it's worth discussing. So they asked, so many villains in Superman and Lois work as an antagonistic inversion, might I say, of the Kents, including Bizarro and the Mannheim family. In season 4, you've got Lex Luthor and Amanda McCoy versus Clark Kent and Lois Lane. Why did you shape your villains in that way? And Todd Helbing said, with Luthor this season, just to get Luthor in it would be awesome, and to have Michael Cudlitz play Luthor is as good as it gets. That's been a joy. We really like to juxtapose the families and what they're going through emotionally with our villains. With Lex, as the season progresses, his world is already small with the people around him. He trusts Amanda, but as he makes these decisions and gets Elizabeth out of his life, his world is getting smaller and smaller, and the Kents are getting bigger and bigger as their identities are revealed and Smallville comes to help. The visualization of that is represented in his suit. The crest this season has all those little S's around it. Bizarro was a very clear choice to show the bad side of fame and what this secret had meant to Clark and the family. We knew that we'd probably eventually get to this point. Brent and I talked about various ways to end this thing, but if that were to come undone, we set it up in season 2 so that it would be a really nice reflection of that. I think generally we approach every season the same way. How do we get what the villain is going to go through to be the complete opposite of what our family is going through? And I think a lot of people did notice this. Like, of course, it's like really shoved in your face, if you want to put it, in season 2 with the Bizarro world and stuff like that. But there's hints of it, even just the even in season 1 with, you know, Taro. It's like the evil version of, you know, two brothers. One took, like, all got landed in like the opposite path. Like that's the path he took. He got put in a really bad situation, very similar with, like, you know, like two farms people finding him, but they didn't, you know, were scared of him and stuff like that. So, and compared to what Kal-El or Clark went through when he was found and he was loved. So one was found with love, one was found with hate. And, you know, they go on their different paths. So there's the, you know, the opposite to it, or the inversion. So it started even back in season 1, but it was like season 2 that really like went heavy handed with it. But yeah, like that's always clearly been an intention around, and even with the whole stuff he was saying about Luther as well, you notice that in the season. But yeah, overall, I think that's actually going to be my last Superman and Lois video specifically on anything to do with like the finale, like, and like talking about interviews and stuff like that. I got some other Superman and Lois stuff I want to do, like just some like talking about the show as a whole, like ranking the seasons and discussing why they're in certain places and stuff like that. Just a handful of other videos. Don't know when I'll release them, but I do want to release them at least over the next, you know, handful of days to a week or something, just to keep it, you know, somewhat fresh to the end of the show. So keep your eyes out for that. But of course, if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you could drop a like on it, show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions about all the stuff we went over and any of the questions and answers that were brought up in this video from various interviews. Always curious to hear what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.